This is the Made for Success podcast, and this is Chris Widener, speaker and author of over 15 books, including the New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller, The Angel Inside. The Made for Success podcast will help you turn your potential into performance, succeed in every area of your life, and achieve your dreams. And now, enjoy the show. My guest today is Brian Tracy, one of America's leading authorities on the development of human potential and personal effectiveness. He's a dynamic and inspiring speaker, addressing subjects of personal and professional development to companies such as IBM, McDonnell Douglas, and the $1 Million Roundtable. He teaches seminars on leadership, self-esteem, goals and strategies, creativity, and practical ideas to get results fast. He's authored many books, including Turbo Coach, $1 Million Habits, and the 100 Absolutely Unbreakable Laws of Business Success. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Chris.
Good to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. You have been a mentor to me through your books and your tapes and millions of other people. And so one of the things that I'm really excited about to have you here, we're going to talk about some of the books and the audio programs and all those principles. But as I mentioned in the opening, one of the things that I really like to help people do is see the person behind the personality. Right. Because at your level, most people see you on a stage in front of 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 people, and they don't get to have this chance, to just sit down with the man, the woman who they get to see in these big arenas and the big seminars, and just sit there and find out about their life. And so I thought it would be interesting for our viewers to find out the person behind the personality. So tell me a little bit about yourself, your family, where you live, some of those things to help people get to know you a little bit better.
Well, I was born in Canada. I was born in Prince Edward Island, which is as close as you can get to England without being on a ship. And during the war, and grew up in Toronto, and then my family moved to California. So I grew up in California, and my whole experience is American. I love America. I'm a passionate American patriot. And then my family moved back to Vancouver, British Columbia, when I was 16. I finished high school there. I didn't finish, but I finished high school. Yeah. Worked at laboring jobs for several years, and then went traveling. I spent 8 years traveling around the world. I've now traveled in 90 countries. I've spoken in 42 countries since I became a speaker. And I began asking the question, why is it that some people are more successful than others? And coming from a poor background with no money and high school dropout and digging ditches and washing dishes and all of that stuff, I was really frustrated. I could tell you within $1 how much money I had in my pocket for several years because I had no money. I slept on the ground. I slept in my car, an old car. I went on unemployment once. I went on welfare once, just once. In those days, they didn't encourage you to go on welfare. They said, if we ever see you in here again, you're going to be in big trouble. And I'll tell you, they were mean about it. So went back to work. We should try that a little bit more. Yeah. But I finally got into sales. I couldn't get a job in laboring, so I got into sales, straight commission sales, knocking on doors. Getting up in the morning. I used to get up in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd be in the parking lot at 7 o'clock waiting for people to come to work, and I'd knock on doors all day long. I used to run from place to place so I could be rejected more often. And I remember one month I made 504 calls and no sales. And I just went from place to place. I was just so frustrated and just barely hanging on by my fingernails, living in a little boarding house, a little room. And one day I went to the top salesman of my company. And I said, what are you doing differently from me? He was making 10 times as much as anybody else. And he said, well, show me your presentation. I'll critique it for you. I said, well, you show me yours and I'll show you mine. Because I didn't know what a presentation was. I was using what I call the blah, blah sell. I'd find somebody go blah, 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 and so on. And he said, well, no, selling is a logical and orderly process that you follow if you want to make sales. And he showed me the process. He showed me instead of talking all the time, to ask questions. Find out if the person is a real prospect. Find out, establish rapport, find out their needs, present, show our product, answer their questions, close the sale, get more sale. I had no idea it was a process. I was just, the light went on. I still remember to this day. I can remember when the light went on. There's an old saying, the more you do of what you're doing, the more you get of what you've got. And Abraham Maslow used to say, if the only tool you have is a hammer, then the whole world looks like a nail. Well, the only tool I had was blah, blah, just going from place to place and going blah, blah about my product. He said, no, 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 there's a process. It's like a recipe. If you follow the recipe, you can prepare the dish. Now, the breakthrough for me was very simple, is that there's a cause and effect relationship with everything. There's a reason everything happens. All business skills are learnable. All sales skills are learnable. All money-making skills are learnable. Yeah. They're learnable skills. Everybody who has them didn't have them. Now they have them. Well, they had to learn them, just like typing with a typewriter or using a cell phone or reading or writing or anything. They're all learnable skills. And anybody can learn the skills. And anybody, 95% of the population can learn virtually any business or any sales or any money-making skill. Once you've learned the skill, you can use it over and over again. So if you learned a way to make money, then you can use that over and over again. And each time you use it, you get better at it. And each time you get better at it, it takes you less time to get the same result. And that's why some people are more successful than others. That's why people go from rags to riches. That's why some people are rich and other people are poor. People who are rich found usually they specialized, they found and learned a success skill, success, sales, business, management. Perfect example, the high road to financial success in our society is entrepreneurship, starting and building a business. 70% of adults want to start and build a business. 80% of all self-made millionaires come from cell phone businesses. Well, what they find is that most people go broke when they start a business. And the research is exhaustive. I mean, all the answers have been found. The reason is because they don't know what they're doing. They're flying by the seat of their pants. So they're making things up as they go along, and they're running it against the clock until they run out of money, and then they go back and work for wages. But then you have, on the other hand, you have serial entrepreneurs. Richard Branson is most famous, but you have serial entrepreneurs who start business after business after business. Everyone is successful.
Start it, build it, sell it. Start it, build it, sell it.
How can this be? It's because they're following a recipe. And if you learn the recipe, you can start one business after another. Because as Richard Branson said, if you can be successful in one business, you can be successful in any business because the principles remain the same. Wow.
And varied businesses, from telephones to airlines to all the businesses he started.
Basic principles remain the same. What I learned is that you can learn any skill you need to learn to achieve any goal you can set for yourself. And for me, coming from so far behind, I thought I was first, I was overwhelmed by the thought. And so I went out, and when I got into sales management, I learned how to sell, and I just sold and sold. I couldn't believe how much I could sell. Within a year, I'd gone from living in a boarding house to having apartments in 3 cities, to flying on jets, to dining in the best restaurants, to never having less than $1,000 in $20 bills in my pocket, to have a Swiss bank account. I mean, it was just unbelievable. I couldn't, and it gone literally from 24 to 25. Why? It's because I learned the ways to sell, and I practiced it over and over again. I got better and better at it, made more and more sales. Not mysterious. Then I got into sales management. Failed completely. And I realized, whoa, sales management is very different from sales. So I went back and I spoke to sales managers, and I read the books and the articles, and I learned how to do it. I learned the recipes, learned the formulas. The principle I learned, I say that all of success is combinations and recipes and formulas. A combination is like a combination lock. If you have the 3 numbers and you turn to the numbers in sequence, the lock opens. And the lock doesn't care. If you do what other successful people do, then the lock opens for you. Yeah. If you don't, the lock doesn't care. I say success is just like a combination lock, but with more numbers. So just find out the numbers, turn to the numbers in the proper sequence, and it opens for you. And that's why people can come to America from 194 different countries now and become successful. Because what the smart ones do, and I've spoken to thousands of them, they get here and they ask around, they look at members of their community who are successful, they say, how does it work in this country? They say, well, this is the combination, this is the formula. So they follow the formula until they master it. 10 years later, still not speaking English half the time. They've got large businesses, they're millionaires, their kids are in Harvard and everything else. Gee, they're sure lucky. They weren't lucky. Yeah. They never knew these things before. Anyway, so the second thing is recipes. And what I say is a recipe is a combination of ingredients in a certain way. And if anybody has ever developed a favorite recipe, then they got the recipe, they took it home, they got the ingredients, and they made it up. And sometimes I'll ask my audience, I say, how did it taste the first time? Yeah. And they say, not very good. Now here's an important thing. Nothing works the first time. Nothing works the first 5 or 10 times. Sometimes you'll have to work at something for years before it works. Some of the biggest breakthroughs in history took 6, 7 years. Yeah. The perfect example, the fax machine. The fax machine was developed. By the way, at the same time that Federal Express was trying to develop an electronic message center, they spent $185 million at it. Somebody invented a fax machine. And Federal Express wrote off their investment because the fax machine could do it almost at no cost. But it took almost 6 or 7 years before the fax machine hit critical mass. Now, almost all of us remember, oh, have you got a fax machine? No, but the people down the hallway do. We can go down and use their fax machine. Remember that?
Yeah.
Now kids have fax machines.
Yeah.
Well, once it took off, it sold by the tens of millions, literally transformed the world. Cell phones straggle along. You might used to have a suitcase for a cell phone. It took 5 or 6 or 7 years, and suddenly they got the technology right and the price right. Boom. Personal computers. Each one of these things at a certain point, the IBM, best research at IBM said the world market for personal computers is no more than 300 to 400 units. That's what they said in 1975, 76.
Right.
So they just walked away from it. Then Apple came along and built their computer in a garage, and the world market became 100 billion units. So when you start off with a new recipe, it's not going to work. Now, what happens when people get a new idea and they put it all together and try it out and it doesn't work? They give up. But the person who has tasted a dish, let's say you and I go to a friend's house or a restaurant, and they have a really great dish. Can I have this recipe? I say, yeah. Take the recipe home and we try it, and it tastes terrible. They say, well, wait a minute. We have an advantage. We know this can taste good because we have tasted it. We're not positive thinkers. We're not wishing and hoping and dreaming. We know it's just a matter of going back and looking at the way we mixed it.
And they usually call the person who cooked it for them and say, I cooked it, but it didn't taste that way. And then they get some help.
Yeah, do a little bit of this, do that. Did you remember to do this? Or wait, and let it sit, and so on. I have a good friend, one of my clients, and he started off in sales. And for 6 months, he spun his wheels and sold nothing. And then he got a hold of my psychology of selling. And he told me over lunch, because he had hired me to address his organization, which was 2,000 people live and 85,000 people by satellite. Wow. And so we're talking over lunch. He said, you changed my life. It took me from rags to riches. Now a very wealthy person, multiple businesses and so on. And he said, it was that cause and effect thing in your program. Here I was, I've been selling for 6 months. I couldn't sell anything. I was really desperate. And I was in my 20s, had a family to feed. And then I got that program and I listened to it, and it said, if you put it in the right causes, you'll get the right effects. Well, the effect I wanted was sales. I wanted to make money. But I realized I must not be putting in the right causes. So like in a recipe, he went back and he looked at each ingredient. And he said, I have to do more of this and less of that. I have to say this and that. And he began to change his sales recipe, if you like. Within 6 more months, he was top in his company. Within 3 more years, he was top in the country. Today he's worth about $21 million. Wow. He's very successful. He says that cause and effect, he said, if you just find out what other people have done to achieve the same result, you'll achieve it yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
So the third thing I talk about is formulas. And there's when you say this is a scientific formula, or this is scientific, what does that mean? Well, I came across this great concept recently, and the word that the scientists use is replicability. It's replicable. If it is a truly scientific formula, I say it may have been developed over many years by geniuses, but now it can be used successfully by morons. And when you understand that, that's why you see people. I say there's nothing will make you madder than to see somebody dumber than you making more money than you.
Yeah.
How could that person be making more money? They're so dumb they can't find their behind with both hands. Well, the answer is they found a scientific formula, we call it a success formula. Sure. For their particular field, whether it's running a business or a recipe, or selling or making money or anything else. I have a good friend, we're here in Dallas talking, I have a good friend here in Dallas who heard that you could buy houses and you could accumulate houses by buying them at the proper prices and then financing them and so on. Well, he had just gone broke in a business, and he heard about this, and he looked at people who were doing it who did not look like they were Rhodes Scholars. And so he said, I'm going to buy 100 houses. And he went out, and over the next 3 years, he bought and accumulated 100 houses. Now, here's what happens. The first house was very hard. He had to look at a lot of houses. He had to do a lot of inspections. The first one is always hard. First sale is the hardest. The first person you hire as an entrepreneur is the hardest. But then he realized there was a system to this. So he attended a couple of courses, and he read the books, and he learned the system. And then he bought a second house, and he was able to finance in and finance out of that. And then a third house. He started off with no money, He said his goal was 100 houses in 3 years. He had 100 houses and about $3 million in equity.
Wow.
He said, well, it works.
And now he can probably drive down a street, see a house for sale, decide instantaneously whether he's going to pick up the phone and get a deal done in a day.
Yeah.
Because he learned it. It's easy to do for him.
But it was hard at the beginning. It was hard at the beginning. He made a lot of mistakes. And what happens with most people when they make mistakes at the beginning, they think that they must be deficient in some way, or the system's deficient, or the product's deficient. No. This is the price that nature demands for success, is you must fail. So all great successes have been great failures. Successful people fail over and over again, whereas unsuccessful people fail once and quit.
It reminds me of G.K. Chesterton in speaking. He said, it's not that it's been tried and found wanting. It's been found difficult and left untried. Do you think that that's really why most people never achieve that kind of thing? Is because it gets hard and they just stop? I mean, is it as simple as that?
Well, almost all of us have deep down fears of failure.
Yeah.
And it's the greatest single obstacle to success. And it's very easily triggered. It's very easily triggered by any kind of frustration, like we're on our way to work and we got an appointment and the traffic jam. Coming over here, there was a traffic jam on the other side. Car was on fire. They blocked off the entire freeway for 25 miles. Everything was stopped. Well, that person gets on there in the traffic jam, and I'm going to miss the appointment. I'm going to miss the deal. I'm going to miss everything else. Oh, damn! And they develop what is called learned helplessness, because they feel helpless. I can't do anything. Then next time they think, well, what's the use? So don't even bother at all. And eventually, I say they talk themselves in and they talk themselves right out of doing what is necessary for success. Whereas successful people, they say, okay, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. What's the next thing? I was stuck in a traffic jam recently. I was driving along the freeway, and it was out in the countryside, and you could see you're driving along about 70, 80 miles an hour, and suddenly all the cars are stopping. You're stopping, and do you realize there's a jam up there, and you can't see, but you can see way ahead, cars jammed. The other side's whipping along. So I'm sitting there, and I'm just almost at an off-ramp. And you're thinking, well, should I sit in traffic and wait? And then I saw a couple of guys in pickups, four-wheel drives, SUVs, going right up the side of the ramp, back onto the road. They were driving off the road, driving down the boulevard, and right up the ramp and onto the road, and getting out and finding another route. And I thought, that's for me. So I turned off, and I drove and drove and drove, and I finally drove all the way around this traffic jam, which was about 15, 20 miles long.
Wow.
Got back onto the freeway, and it was empty. Freeway's like an empty parking lot. And I drove home. Well, I learned later that a semi had turned over, and the traffic was backed up for 3 hours. The entire afternoon. It was about 2 o'clock. For the entire afternoon, those people who did not move quickly were stopped. Now, there's a metaphor there. I mean, that's what successful people do in life. If things don't work, they try something else. They move quickly. They don't say, oh, well, maybe things will get better, you know.
The masses just sit there and go, I wonder why we're not moving.
That's right. Yeah, so you find that entrepreneurs are very fast on their feet.
Yeah.
You know, here in Dallas, they made that movie. Actually, it was in Houston, Apollo 13, and Eugene Krantz was famous for that line. Where he stands up and he tells everybody, he said, ladies and gentlemen, he said, there's people talking about what we will do and how we will explain it if it doesn't work out and they all die and people are thinking of covering themselves. He said, I want to tell you something. Failure is not an option. Yeah. Failure is not an option. And that has to be your philosophy. As far as I'm concerned, failure is not an option. The possibility of failure is not even considered. There will be temporary setbacks and defeats and disappointments. Most self-made millionaires have been broke 2.3 times. Broke or nearly broke 2.3 times before they made it. Some of the most successful people in America, at one time Henry Ford was the richest man in America. He was bankrupt at the age of 40, third time. Most amazing story, he just never stopped. And that's the most wonderful thing. If you ask what's the key to success, is to become unstoppable.
Well, that's one of the amazing things about sitting here with successful people like yourself is I hear it over and over and over. I was born in poverty. You know, Albert Mensah, I was born in Ghana in a hut. You know, and I like for the viewers to see everybody saying, I've had obstacles. I had, you know, cancer. I was born into poverty. And it helps people say, wow, if they can do it, I can do it. Yeah. Because there's nothing that stops me from that.
Now here's a couple of quick points, and I tell this to my audiences. I say, remember this: nobody is better than you, and nobody is smarter than you. Get that out of your head, because that is a killer. That's a self-sabotaging idea. You see somebody doing better than you, the natural conclusion is if he or she is doing better, then he must be better. Mm-hmm. No, they're not better than you. They're not smarter than you. They just learned the cause and effect relationships before you did. Mm-hmm. Some of them are idiots, but what they thought. But an idiot who's got the right formula will be successful, whereas a genius who doesn't will be driving a taxi cab at the age of 50. So nobody's smarter than you, nobody's better than you. You have more intelligence and potential than you could ever use in 100 lifetimes. The question is, if it doesn't work, try something else. And it's very much like working out with weights. If you want to build muscle, I used to be a bodybuilder, what you do is you pump iron. In pumping iron, what you do is you pump blood into your muscles, and it breaks all the capillaries. It actually is an act of destruction. And then your body repairs itself and builds new capillaries around, which is how you build muscles. Mm. And it's the same thing with your mind, is when you have experiences and you have setbacks that are distressing and you learn from them, your mind pumps iron. You get smarter, you become quicker, you become more alert, you become more aware. There's a price that you pay. You can't go from innocence to success in a highly competitive society without getting bruised a bit. It's like someone wants to be a championship boxer, just doesn't want to get punched. You know, they say everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Right. Well, everybody wants to be rich, but nobody wants to take the pounding that is necessary to be financially independent. Just keep remembering, failure is not an option. I'm unstoppable. Nobody's smarter than me. Nobody's better than me. If they're doing better, it's because they figured out the formula before me. Mm-hmm. But if hundreds of thousands of millions of people, America today has 8.2 million millionaires, almost all of whom are self-made. My daughter was married in August, and my first daughter, and 4 children, daughter, 2 boys and a daughter, and married to a wonderful young man, comes from a good family, and so she decided she wanted to have the wedding at our home. And so we sat down, and you never want to talk about how much it costs. They won't even tell me afterwards because it's too heartbreaking.
I have 3 daughters, so don't tell me that.
The costs are unbelievable. Whatever number they give you as the maximum number, multiply it by 2. Anyway, so in order to accommodate 160 people, they had this beautiful tent, like something out of the Arabian Nights, and bands and music and sushi bars and karaoke and flowers that you cannot believe. Everything. And so we're at this at the wedding reception after the wedding, and my son-in-law, Christina's husband, his family, they brought the whole family down, and they're all in our house from Los Angeles, in a 90-minute, 2-hour drive. And they're all standing around, and of course, there's a lot of face here. I mean, you want to be able to put on a wonderful wedding for your daughter. And these people are wealthy. They own large businesses and law firms and everything else. So they brought them all down. None of them have ever been there before. They're looking around. It's not a bad house, and the wedding is beautiful, and everything is fun. So I'm sitting there talking to 2 of them, the most successful of them all. And they said, "This is a beautiful house, Ryan. You've done a wonderful job here." I said, "Well, I can't tell you how happy I am to be able to do this for my daughter, especially since I started with nothing. And I've made it everything I've done by myself." And the other person, who's in charge of a 102 lawyer law firm with 250 staff supporting the lawyers, multi-millionaire, he said, "Well, I started with nothing too." He said, when I got out of school, I had nothing. My family had nothing. The guy next to him is the senior partner. Said, "Well, I have nothing." Then they were referring to my I call my father-in-law, the father of my son-in-law. Larry started with nothing too. Yeah. We're talking about everybody started with nothing. Everywhere I go, I talk to my best friend, one of my best friends who's got now a real estate fortune of about $25 million. He's an immigrant, came over, started with nothing. I find that this is a story of America. Everybody starts with nothing. People think, "Well, I don't have anything to start off with." Well, join the crowd.
Well, and even the people on the Forbes 400, the people who inherited it, they got it from somebody who started with nothing. It always is traced back to somebody started with nothing.
Yeah, it's the most amazing, John. It's amazing how many self-made billionaires there are. The richest people in America, if you start to look at the richest people in America, and I follow this and you follow it, number 1, Bill Gates, started with nothing. Good education, good family, but nothing. Self-made. And number 2, Warren Buffett, started with nothing, self-made. Number 3, probably Larry Ellison of Oracle, started with nothing. Michael Dell started with nothing. Paul Allen started with nothing. And the next 5 are the descendants of Sam Walton, who started with nothing.
Exactly. And at the end, he basically was still driving that old blue pickup truck, because he didn't need anything.
The richest people in our country, and most respected.
Yeah.
Now, here's a difference between America and most of the world. I speak all over the world. I speak French, German, Spanish. Do all kinds of seminars, multiple languages and cultures. But one of the differences in America is that if you started a business and you failed in the business, and I meet you for dinner or socially, and I say, how's your business going? You say, well, I went bust. I had to shut the doors, went bankrupt. My reaction would be, geez, that's amazing. What happened? Well, I did this, I didn't do that. Well, what would you do next time? Well, I'll do a little bit of this and this. What are your plans? Well, I'm going to start another business. In other words, in America, going bankrupt is not a mark of shame. It's a mark of maturity. It means that you took a chance, you gave it a shot, and it didn't work. And whenever you speak to a person who went bankrupt, they're talking about their next business, their next project.
Yeah, exactly.
In America, and I write on this, in America, you can start a business within 24 hours. If you go onto the internet, you can do it even faster than that. We have the fastest rate of new business formation of any country in the world. We have the most entrepreneurial country in the world, according to the OECD in Paris. We have more people starting more businesses in more areas, because you can start a business by just saying, I think I will have a business. You and I could say, Chris, why don't we start a business? Okay, and we're in business.
Yeah.
We can
Sign the paper.
We can start buying and selling before we get any paper signed. He said, let's buy some stuff from these guys and sell it. Okay, great. I'll put in some money, you put in some money. We're in business before we walk out of the building.
Yeah.
We can do that. That's not possible in 95% of the world's countries. So America is wonderful. And if we fail, what do we do? Try something else. That's the attitude that all successful people have.
I always find it interesting, we talk about, is America great and all these, and the fact is, if you open the borders up, the earth would tilt off its axis. Because everybody would rotate over to America, because everybody wants to pursue, it's the American dream. Nobody talks about the Chinese dream or the European dream, it's the American dream.
Thanks for listening to the Made for Success podcast. Get to know us at madeforsuccess.com/podcast. Meet the hosts of the Made for Success podcast and pick up a free copy of the Totally Motivated ebook by Chris Widener. We will see you next time on the Made for Success podcast.